Joining me here very shortly, here at 6:31, and we're going to answer some questions and take a very deep dive into the timeline. We'll go hour by hour with FUTURECAST here in just a moment. So we'll wait for some folks to get on board. Let me head over to my Facebook page and make sure everything is streaming good, and then we'll get rolling right away here. We'll go ahead and put on the what we call the double box.
All right, this must be TG's chair. It's a little short.
Doug Proffitt taking a jab at TG.
Hello, everyone. Ben, I've got some questions for you. If people are just now joining us, I thought a couple of interesting things came out of our newscast tonight while we were on the air beginning at 5 o'clock. The one thing we want to emphasize folks, is that this forecast, unlike a lot of others, is really locked in. We're going to get exactly what they've been telling us.
Wait, hold on. Exactly is never.
A winter storm, a winter storm, and an ice accumulation. That's exactly what you guys have been saying since early on. But you were able to say at 5:45, I heard you say for the first time that you don't think it's going to be bad as 2009, which we all have nightmares about, but we don't want to lower the concern over this, even though we say that. But
right.
that's at least some, to me, that's at least some good news, because I was without power 10 days.
Yeah, obviously we don't want it as bad as 2009. Right now, the data does not lean to it as being as bad as 2009, when we had a record amount of over, I think, 600,000 power outages in Kentucky.
For the state. Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that. I think there's three main reasons why the ice will be a little bit less than that, and that's because it's going to be windier. I think we'll have wind gusts 15 to 30 miles per hour. So if you think about that rain hitting power lines and hitting trees, if you have a more gentle breeze, it'll just sit on top of the trees and power lines. Well, this is kind of getting, blown off. Second, heavy rainfall rates just doesn't freeze very, very good. So if you've got lighter freezing rain, it adds up actually quicker. It's kind of counterintuitive. If you have heavy rainfall, less ice. So we've got heavy rainfall rates that we're expecting.
It's very interesting, the change on it.
And lastly, is that 2009 started off as freezing rain from the get-go. Half of this storm, the water content that we're going to use for it, is going to be just rainfall tomorrow through tomorrow night. So and both storms had about 2 to 3 inches of water to use.
Another thing you said is when it switches over to sleet, I always hear freezing rain. Well, that to me, it would be the most troublesome. But it's the sleet that's going to cause some other major issues right afterwards.
I think the ice is what we worry about for the tree damage, the power outages. It might not be super horrible on the roads for the first half of the day, but if you start kicking in sleet and some snow on top of some ice, slick bridges and overpasses, then we're talking hazardous or impossible driving conditions.
And we are talking about Thursday. That's the day to really pay attention, because tomorrow it's going to be all rain. Now, CJ Daniels, who is with our web folks, has been getting questions from you. You've been texting us since really 5 o'clock today to our number at WHAS 11. And CJ, if you got any questions, I'd like to hit Ben with the first one, since people took the time to text.
We have none just yet.
Okay.
We've got questions here, though.
Go ahead.
So how much ice and snow in Shepherdsville? So it looks like, a quarter inch of ice is probably a pretty good estimate for a lot of the area. I think there could be some higher amounts, which we certainly don't want. And then on top of the ice for the northern half of the area, we're looking at about 1 to 3 inches. Now, Shepherdsville, just south of Louisville, you might get an inch, maybe 2 inches of some sleet and some snow on top of some of the ice that we see across the area.
I thought it was great the other night. You told everybody what you were doing at your house to get ready, and that was getting your generators ready.
I got my generator back in my garage. It was up in the cabin. We've got it full of gasoline. We've got extra gasoline. We got a good tip from a friend: fill up your propane tanks so you can grill.
Yes.
And then, we've got all of our groceries. I saw a Facebook post here earlier, a comment, talk about all the things that were off the shelves in the grocery today.
And we're getting the double whammy, of course, with the supply chain shortages as well. Here's what I did today. Filled my car full of gas. Mm-hmm. I think that's very important. I put 3 different styles of boots that I wear in my car, because
you got to be stylish.
Years of reporting on this stuff, folks. I got caught off guard a long time ago. I do have things in my car that I could eat if I were to slide off the road, like peanuts and stuff like that, and power bars. Also, My scraper. When I come down to the TV building on Thursday morning, I will bring that into the building with me, because when I go back out to the car to get out of here, if I can, I will need it.
Things to remember.
Things to remember. I have made sure that the gutters were clear. I have also booked a hotel room for my family in a part of the county that did not lose power in '09. I did this in '09 because I don't know how brilliant I became that day. I don't know why I did it, but it paid off. We were in that hotel room for 10 days.
Wow.
But because I'll be down here working as well, I do expect that I'll be walking back and forth. But those are just some of the things you can do. I did not find a lot of long lines at the gas stations, but I did notice the supermarket.
And for me, I'm debating on the hotel room for tomorrow night and a Thursday morning. Our impacts are going to progress from north to south. I want to show you what we're expecting as far as the timeline here. So you can see that Indiana is getting in on the impacts first. After midnight, late tomorrow night. That's the light blue that you see there just north of Louisville. Some light icing will begin there first before sunrise. And then as we go into central sections of our WHS-11 viewing area, southern Indiana along the Ohio River down to the Bluegrass and Western Kentucky Parkways, it looks like after about 7 o'clock in the morning Thursday, we'll start to see some of the icing to develop. I think the main roads could be the last to see the impacts. Because we won't have immediate freezing on the road surfaces. Now, elevated areas, your deck and railings, the roof of your house, limbs, tree limbs, and power lines will have the icing first. And then areas off to the south, deeper into the afternoon and evening, south of Elizabethtown, Bluegrass, Western Kentucky Parkway, down to the Cumberland Parkway, we'll start to see some of the winter weather impacts moving that direction. I want to show you a map of the ice accumulation. And it's cutting right through Kentuckiana. I did post this on Facebook a little earlier today. And again, thinking around 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch of ice. And Doug, when you look at this...
Let me ask you about that.
Yeah.
Your graphic, the 3/4 of an inch, of course, I've never forgotten that. That is what the total amount of icing was in 2009. That brought down, it gave us the historic power outages for Kentucky, which have never been surpassed since 2009. So why is it now that you believe that this event won't be as bad as '09, even though that's on that range?
Well, like the reason, if we get a little lull in the winds, the rain's going to be scattered. It's not the same intensity across the area. So every winter system has a varying amount of precipitation type, and so from county to county we could see just a fluctuation in the amounts of accumulation. So you got to go to the top range, 3/4 of an inch I think is maximum, and then the lower end we're looking at about 1/4 of an inch. So we definitely don't want 3/4 of an inch. I'm just saying that potential is possible. I don't think it's a guarantee at all that you'll see that much.
Let's talk about Thursday and how that day is going to break. Because Wednesday we're going to have the rain. Then Thursday morning, when people are going to be thinking, and let's just say, let's hope JCPS and the other schools make the call early. I assume they probably will, and you probably don't even want to think about going to work. I know my wife and I have talked. She's canceling everything. So Thursday, you say that there will be drivable conditions for just a few hours. What's that window?
I think, again, it's going to be this progression. I've got a graphic for this of the impacts from north to south across the area. So let's say we're talking mid to late morning Thursday. First, you'll see some ice, what we call accretion. It's the accumulation of ice on trees, power lines, and elevated objects first. That's because they are exposed to the below freezing air. We can't forget that we're going to get about 1 to 2 inches of liquid water on the ground. That's not going to immediately flash freeze because this is a slow drop in temperatures. It's a process. So then the next impact will be slick bridges and overpasses, probably into the early afternoon. That's because the cold air goes underneath the road surfaces and those elevated roadways. Then finally, later in the afternoon, evening, I think some of the main routes could start to get icy and dicey when you start to add some sleet and some snow into the equation. When the depth of the atmosphere begins to get colder and colder, you go from the freezing rain to the sleet and the snow that will cover some of the main roads that especially are not treated. Neighborhood roads, countryside roads, could be slick and hazardous through much of the day.
And then for several days after that, because the temperature is going to drop, and we invite you to go ahead. Ben and I are looking at your questions here. We see Brenda Sanders and Barbara Ray. Go ahead and put your questions there, and we'll get to them specifically for you. So once again, though, that reminds me of '09 is when that icing event stopped. Then we went to bitter cold temperatures, and I think that's why in Metro Louisville, the last person got their power back on 10 days later, because it just took a long time.
We're going to look at those temperatures here in just a second with FutureCast. We'll be below freezing probably until Sunday afternoon after this happens. So we've got some really cold weather that's on the way. This is a polar front that's moving in and causing this situation. The reason why we've got a freezing rain setup, you've got a shallow layer of cold air, and then over the top of that, you're overrunning above freezing temperature. So you've got liquid water hitting the surface, and then that shallow cold air begins to freeze that. Now on the tail end of this system, there will be a chance for some snow. And don't forget, just up north in Indianapolis, up to a foot of snow possible there over to St. Louis. Any regional travel will be interrupted. Air traffic is going to be interrupted for a couple days as well.
And so let's talk about how the storm is going to play out, because it's so different. I mean, we've been 13 years since we really had to really talk about serious ice. So a lot of times when you're watching our newscast and you all see Ben on the air, the day before a snowstorm or snow event, he's able to really give you that forecast and change maybe the forecast, downgrade it or upgrade it the night before, and then we're all able to prepare. But on this one, we really have to get into this storm before things are you're going to be able to be on the air and say, hey, it's ramping up, or it's not going to be as bad. You know, it's going to take a while.
Hey, let's not fool ourselves. This is not perfection. This is a forecast. We want you to be ready for the potentials that we see, that we're going to see. And we're talking about 4 different types of precipitation that we're going to see over the next 48 hours. This is the most complicated type of system that we get into Kentuckiana. So we always have confusion over what is freezing rain and sleet. We're going to get plain rain tomorrow on the left side of your screen. That's when the depth of the atmospheric column is above freezing. Freezing rain, notice that blue line, anything underneath that is cold air, less than 32 degrees. So you got a very shallow layer of cold air at the surface. That moves in late tomorrow night into early Thursday morning. On top of that shallow cold layer is the liquid raindrops. The raindrop makes it all the way down on the ground, freezes after contact. That's freezing rain. Now when the depth of the atmosphere is colder throughout a larger depth, then you get sleet. You got raindrops that freeze in midair and then hit and bounce off the ground, those little ice pellets. That's sleet. If the entire depth of the atmosphere is below freezing, you start off as snow, it lands as snow. So we're looking at rain, freezing rain, sleet, and snow all over the next 48 hours. And so it is going to be a messy situation. Just a quick tip here, Doug. If you run into the freezing rain and sleet, don't try to make those quick jerky motions right or left. Keep that steering wheel straight. Do not brake. Take your foot off the accelerator to slow down. And really, if it gets really nasty, best advice is to not even go outside when it gets really bad, which we're expecting.
Well, Tammy Ratliff is a driver for JCPS. She says, I pray they make the call early. I'll gladly make up snow days for the safety of the children and staff. We all agree with you there, Tammy, and thanks for your good work. It's a tough job. And I thought Elizabeth McCoy's question was good because we know how these lines can be so defined. How much are they going to get in Bullitt County, just across the Jefferson County line? Could there be a major difference in Bullitt County?
Probably not a major difference in the ice amounts. Again, we're talking about 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch, but you might see less of that sleet and snow mix. It looks like the best chance for some more significant sleet and snow mix will be along and north of Interstate 64. JCPS, I'll say it now, not going to go to school Thursday, not going to go to school Friday. Why would you have school when you have a winter storm watch, which will become a warning?
That's Ben saying that. They haven't announced it yet, but we know. I mean, they're good folks at JCPS. Right. We know them well. Laura Scott texted, will they treat the roads early or wait until after the storm?
There will be no treatment of the roads because you're looking at heavy rain tomorrow through tomorrow night into Thursday morning. That would just wash away all the brine, all the salt. So the roads will not be treated, and then you're just waiting for the temperatures to go below freezing. And the rain's going to be coming down at a good rate. Remember, this is rain, lands on the ground, and then freezes. So you can't treat the roads.
So we're going to be all over. We're already positioning our reporters to get into spots because we know we can't wait till this starts, and then we have to drive to them. And we've got a question here from Karen Hart. Hey, Doug and Ben, how much ice will Elizabethtown get Highway 210 area? So that's a nice few miles away from downtown Louisville. What about E-Town?
Yeah, I'm saying probably about a tenth of an inch to a quarter of an inch, but I will ask all of you, how much ice do you have? Because this is going to be what we call now casting. We're not going to know exactly how much is on the ground until it's on the ground. We're giving you what the potential of a quarter to 3/4 of an inch of ice for much of the area. But that's going to vary from county to county, from community to community, and we will definitely want your participation in letting us know how much ice is in your area. We'll keep tabs on if we get power outages and how widespread they become on Thursday. And look at this, Doug. This is a storm that's impacting all the way from the desert Southwest down to the Mexico-United States border, all the way up to the Great Lakes and into New England, up into Canada, eastern 2/3 of the United States. We are not alone in this. So every National Weather Service office across this entire area has put out these winter storm warnings and winter storm watches in preparation for what is a very large and impactful winter storm that we're expecting. It is just starting to gather here out to the west. You can see that rain and some snow through Missouri and Illinois. So we're going to move into FUTURECAST and spend a lot of time here. If you got a question, we can get to that before that.
Text messaging. People are sending us messages to 502-582-7290. A person with a great question, I thought, will it be okay to drive on Friday afternoon? Friday afternoon after we've had a whole day of this.
Friday afternoon is probably going to be fine for your well-traveled routes. They're going to be treated, they're going to be plowed. They'll have plenty of time to get that. And once they get salt on the ground, it's not going to be so cold that the treatment won't work. So if you remember through a lot of the different ice events that we've had, you could get around a lot of times. A lot of times the interstates and things were in pretty good shape. I think the worst is going to be during the evening commute Thursday throughout the overnight into Friday morning. I mean, that's when things could get really, really rough.
Here's a good one from Alex Crowley. I think this is a really good question. Why are we considering this a winter storm warning and not an ice storm warning at the moment?
Okay, I had a good conversation with the head of the National Weather Service here in Louisville about that today. Ice storm warning is if you are only expecting ice. We are also expecting a chance for some sleet and snow on top of the ice. So winter storm warning covers ice, sleet, snow. Ice is just one component in the winter storm warning that we will likely have out by 4 a.m. It looks like 4 a.m. is going to be the decision to switch this from a winter storm watch to a winter storm warning.
Here's a good one for parents. Hey, I live in Louisville, but I am at school at UK in Lexington. Or one of the meteorologists in Lexington said we could get an inch of ice according to the GFS model, but I haven't heard that number anywhere else. Can you provide some kind of insight about the impact on the Lexington area? Of course, Lexington really, we were about 09, but that city's been hit much harder by ice than we have. Oh, yes.
So any professional meteorologist should not just spit out weather model data. That's called guidance. I could show you some very, very, very high ice amounts that are even way higher than that. But it's not taking into account the wind that we talked about, the heavy precipitation rates that reduces the ice amounts. And so you've got to take in different variables. A lot of times I'll say divide in half what you see in that raw weather model data. You go to college for many years and study this for a reason. There are other variables other than just looking at the weather models.
So let's go over the headlines. We know a lot more of you have just joined us, and what Ben has been reporting on WHAS 11 News since 5 o'clock tonight. And that is that he does not believe that this will be as bad as the 2009 ice storm that knocked out power for 10 days.
We just had that question too.
Brought down power lines. That is new today, but we are going to have enough ice, folks, more so than we've ever been used to around Louisville, that this will cause issues on the roads, and it will still cause some power outages. It's a great relief
more than likely,
for me to even hear that to you as well, because it was It was a terrible storm in 2009.
And there was I think it was a couple of years ago, maybe 2018. We only had a quarter-inch of ice. It bent all the pine trees in our neighborhood, and those pine trees are still damaged to this day. That's only 1/4 of an inch of ice. Quarter-inch of ice, 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So lower amounts of ice can still have big impacts, especially with some breezy conditions. Now this right here, Doug, is Wednesday morning. So tomorrow morning, it is a wet morning commute. It's all liquid during the daytime. But notice how Indiana starts to see this pink color. I'll go to full screen so you can see this a little bit better. They're dropping below freezing north of the river not long, it looks like, after midnight into early Thursday morning. So there could be some light accumulation of icing in southern Indiana first during the pre-dawn hours of Thursday morning. Now as we look a little bit further ahead, you're going to start to see that pink line move south of the river as we get through mid-morning into the late morning. Temperatures starting to drop below freezing. That's when we start to really have some concerns, especially into the afternoon when we all go to frozen precipitation here. Freezing rain, sleet, and snow. Notice Interstate 64 and north is starting to see more of that sleet and snow. That's the blue color. That's 5 p.m. on Thursday. So the evening rush hour, Thursday, is probably the worst that we'll see. I think the roads will primarily just be wet for the Thursday morning commute. Now we're still 24 hours of weather model data that we'll be looking at. There still could be some adjustments. So this is not set in stone, but definitely the weather models are in very good agreement. We start to see this taper off Thursday night. This is 11 p.m. But there could still be some light icing and some light snow even on the tail end of this into Friday morning. That's 11 a.m. Friday.
Two good questions while you're on that graphic. Steve Sawyers is asking, is snow over ice better or worse when it comes to driving? I have to say it. I would say it was
worse.
Pretty worse. Yeah. And is there any chance, Chris Marlin is asking, if this the heavy snow line could have moved further south?
There is that potential. If we get that Arctic air layer in here, you've got a snowpack to the north. Sometimes a snowpack can allow that cold air to drift south more efficiently. So right now the heavy snow line is up right around Seymour, Indiana and north. Up to Indy, we're looking at a foot of snow. If the cold air is deeper and comes down more quickly, there could be more areas that see some of that heavier snow as we get in, deeper into southern Indiana. I don't think that heavy snow is going to move much farther south than the Ohio River.
Here's a flashback from 2009. Heather Morgan, it was terrible. No power for 16 days. Husband on crutches after surgery with a 9-month-old and 4-year-old. God bless you there, Heather. But look, you've survived it really well. And that's why we all have these memories. It was 13 years ago. To me, it almost seems like it was just a couple of years ago.
I remember it very, very well. And I remember our FUTURECAST just showed that pink color the day before, just all over us. And Chief Meteorologist Monty Webb, the chief back then, we were looking at it, we're like, I just don't think we could be in freezing rain that long. Mm-hmm. Like, we were having our doubts. And the weather model did a fantastic job, unfortunately, because we ended up with just a mess. We also had more snow and sleet on top of the ice in 2009 than we expect this time around.
Let's talk about those models. I mean, when I saw you on Monday, when we came in here, you were talking about how this was a rare agreement with all of them coming together so many days out.
Which
and
is good.
The National Weather Service had issued a winter storm watch so many days
3
out.
days in advance.
Which does not happen? Is that correct?
Not very often. A lot of times, I mean, if the weather models were not agreeing, we would not have had a winter weather watch this early. Because I've been texting the snow maps since last week to my brother-in-law, father-in-law. Their snow nuts just
that's called inside information, folks.
But that snow line was all the way up Chicago at one point and all the way south into like central Kentucky. So we're talking 150-mile difference, maybe more.
It's huge.
That's been shifting over the last week. Well, now, ever since late weekend into early this week, the weather models have been agreeing very, very close together, not only with the snow potential over central Indiana, but with this ice potential. That zone that you see there, this is, I believe, the North American weather model, the NAM, but it's very similar to, no, this is the European weather model, very similar to the NAM, the GFS, the Canadian weather model, the graph that we all look at. So there's a lot of consistency that builds confidence. That's why you see these watches and warnings out so soon.
We know we've got a lot of WHS 11 viewers down there in Taylor County, Campbellsville, around Columbia, and they are asking too as well. How are things going to be around Columbia? People really have Mayfield, Kentucky still in their hearts and minds, Ben, as well, and I was just wondering what southern part of the state looks like.
Well, southwest looks pretty bad around Paducah. You're going to fare a lot better in southeastern Kentucky when you're looking at a lot more rain in the mix in southeastern areas. Now the darker the colors in this map right here, we'll make it a little bit bigger, that indicates the heavier ice potential. The light pink is very light icing. Now the zone, the bullseye zone, I'll call it, right over the Ohio River, Metro Louisville, that could certainly shift north a little bit or south. 20, 30-mile difference in that bullseye of significant ice is going to mean a big different impact, whether it's southern Indiana or Metro Louisville or central Kentucky around the parkways. So there is still room for this to move north and south. That is not set in stone. This is ice potential. We say potential. We say possible. We are not going to know exactly what's on the ground again until it's on the ground. But you want the heads up, obviously, that we've got this on the way.
New Albany expected to be on a mess, and expected to be a mess too, I would imagine. Carrie is saying, let's talk the important stuff, Ben. How about the sectional Friday night? I would think we're going to see cancellations. I mean, watch the bottom of our screen on television and check out this website.
My daughter's got sectionals on Saturday, so I'd say Saturday's better than Friday. I think it's just we're going to have to wait and see how the outer roads do. I think the main routes will be fine by Friday evening. But if the neighborhoods and the countryside roads are covered, then we might still have some cancellations.
Maybe an inside baseball question, but a lot of people have been asking this question, like Dwight Leonard Wise. Why is it always blue on the radar? I've had a lot of people have been wondering about the blue colors.
It's just how we represent snow.
There you go. That is snow, Dwight.
We've got green for rain. We usually use green for rain.
Normally, I'd be thrilled with all that blue,
for
but
snow,
not when it comes to ice.
Now, not all snow's blue. The deeper the snow here, we turn it to dark blue and purple, and then white when you get over a foot. So that's looking at about a foot of snow up just to the north.
So we're coming up top of the hour. We're going to wrap this up. CJ, Daniels, any other questions? Okay. We've had a lot of great ones here on the Facebook page. And here's one from Steve Givens. We'll wrap it up with this. With today's warm temps and relatively warm temperatures tomorrow, when the conversion to freezing rain starts, wouldn't it take a while for the roads to ice up? I know the trees and power lines could accumulate sooner and first. That's an excellent question, Steve, and we'll wrap it up with that.
Yeah, Steve, that's exactly what we just talked about. I think the roads will be the last to freeze up. That could be later in the day, Thursday into the afternoon or evening. Your elevated objects are going to freeze first, your trees, your power lines, your back deck, your railings, your porch. And then we're going to see bridges and overpasses, elevated roadways will get icy. And then eventually, since the temperature drop is going to be pretty slow during the day, we'll start to see the roads, even the main routes could be pretty icy and dicey thanks to the addition of some sleet and snow that we could see later in the day Thursday.
So as we get closer to the winter storm approach tomorrow, we'll go ahead and do this again tomorrow night. I think this was great information to do this for about 30 minutes. The top headlines before we leave you as we go into our 11 o'clock news on the WHAS 11 night team is Ben is able to tell you that this won't be as bad as the 2009 winter storm devastation. That's what he's believing, been saying on the air since 5 o'clock. But we still have enough ice that he's detailed for us very clearly here that it could be a very significant accumulation, which can be devastating on power lines and certainly on the roadway. So we're not lowering our expectations at all. It's somewhat of a relief to hear that it's not exactly as bad as 09, but then these things can take on their own personalities.
And I'll describe that one more time before we wrap up. The 09 storm had about 2 to 3 inches of water to work with, that whole storm. We've got about 2 to 3 inches of water to work with this storm. So what's the big difference? Half of this storm will just be rain. Tomorrow is rain, into early Thursday morning is rain before it switches over to freezing rain, sleet, and some snow. So that's a big difference. Also, it looks like this is going to be a windier system. Wind gusts 15 to 30 miles per hour on Thursday. winds do not help the ice to accumulate on the trees and power lines. And we also have some heavier rainfall rates. If it's light rain that freezes, that adds up more quickly than heavy rainfall. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but that's how it works. So we've got some ingredients that are showing us that it should be lower than 2009. Again, we hope.
Well, I've appreciated this because, as you all know, I love snow, and I can barely get Ben to tell me that there's snow in a long range forecast. He doesn't like to let me know that information
because we care about accuracy.
Yes, because he doesn't want us talking about it early. So, but now we've been giving you the first alert since Sunday, and now we know how this is going to play out. So I'd say join us at 11 o'clock. We always get new updates through the evening on the WHAS 1119, and we'll both see you there tonight at 11.
All right, we'll see you later.